I'll tell you the most recent chapter in this story. Last year the Black Cats, or death squads of the police, started killing the families of the generals who were fighting for Khalistan. They tried to kill my father. They attacked him, they hit him with a car, and broke both his legs. He got gangrene poisoning through that, and died. Then the police took my mother and my sister into custody, and my sister was as yet unmarried. It's a very bad thing for unmarried girls in police stations. But you know what my mother said to me on the telephone after they were released? She said, "Don't worry, son. It's not happening only with me or with your sister. This is happening with all the mothers, all the sisters of Punjab. So just forget about it." Who knows what they went through? But so bravely they went on anyway, they didn't even want sympathy from me. This is why we cannot lose. While we had been talking, a few other house guests had entered the room. "Those women are full of courage," one said. Another responded, "Well, that courage comes when people are fighting for a good cause. That's the price of getting your own country. If you can't pay it, you don't deserve a country." Little Manbir, the new baby, was brought in by his father. "The newest Khalistani," someone said, and everyone laughed. I ventured an opinion. "Isn't there a danger," I asked, "of coming to think that because you suffer so much, you deserve a country? Of almost relishing that suffering because you see it as the birth pangs of a nation?" I thought of how Iqbal Singh had said that it was clear what Khalistanis were fighting against, but less clear what they were fighting for. What do you expect that Khalistan will be like? What kind of a country are you suffering to achieve? I asked. "It will be a just country, where everybody will be respected," Harpal Singh said. "Everybody means everybody. Hindus, Christians, anybody else. Every person in Punjab will have his rights respected. How could we deny that, after what we've been through ourselves?" "But that seems to be a hard lesson to learn," I responded. "Look at the Jews. They suffered so much persecution, but now 1 generation after the Holocaust, they are forgetting some of their own experience in the way they treat the Palestinians. The last generation in India suffered under the British, and now they are doing this to the Sikhs. So how will the Sikhs prevent a similar thing from happening? Because we are a product of our religion. In our prayers we ask God to take care of everybody. Good food for everybody, a good life for everybody. Not just for Sikhs. You know about the Sikh kingdom of Ranjit Singh. He loved Hindus, Muslims, Christians. Even Frenchmen and Britishers served in his military. We have this in our history as well as in our faith, that we will protect and take care of others, even if they don't agree with us." I could think of a lot of problems with this argument, not least of which was that Ranjit Singh was not a Sikh in anything like the same way that Khalistani militants are Sikhs. He drank scotch and had multiple wives, for example, not to speak of the very different historical circumstances. But it also has to be remembered that his empire was called Khalsa Raj, named after Guru Gobind Singh's Khalsa. Minted coins bore images of Guru Nanak, and he was the culmination of a century of struggle waged by Amritsari Sikhs against the Mughal state. He always recited Sikh prayers in the morning, received Hukam Namaz, and like Guru Nanak, he was liberal in his attitude towards Hindus and Muslims. He abolished the death sentence for every crime, however heinous it might be. In making appointments of his cabinet ministers and councillors, Ranjit Singh was his own judge, without any consideration of caste and creed. Efficiency was the main criterion of his selection. The central government was run under about a dozen departments of the state, supervised by chosen men of talent and ability, who controlled the civil administration, the regalia or treasury, land revenue, octroi and excise, pay and accounts, income and expenditure, royal household and other departments. Its chief functionaries were the Home Minister, the Lord Chamberlain, the Minister in charge of the regalia and treasury, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Auditor General, the Councillors of Religious Affairs and the others. His empire was divided up into 4 states, each controlled by a governor. The governor had under him, a pivotal functionary in the provincial administration. Appointed by the central government, he exercised fiscal, revenue and judicial powers. The customary land revenue system with its various modes of assessment and collection, inherited by Ranjit Singh from the Mughals, was maintained by him with minor modifications. Every village had a revenue collector. There were magistrate courts in various districts, and his empire had an intelligence network, stretching across the borders. Ranjit Singh was also progressive in the sense that he modernized the Khalsa army on European lines. And what about the militants themselves, who are factionalized into so many groups that claim to be in basic agreement, but can't talk in a civil fashion to one another, let alone to people in radical disagreement? But before I could think about whether to voice these thoughts or not, Harpal Singh had a semi-answer. Whatever we may do with Khalistan, it cannot be worse than what we already face in India. India is not a country that has any moral ground, from which to criticize what we may or may not do with Khalistan. Like they have this new Human Rights Commission, the Mishra Commission. It's a total fraud. Because the people who know the system of India, they know the truth behind the democracy rhetoric, and the truth behind the secularism rhetoric. The truth is that minorities don't have a place in India. Buddhists, Christians, tribals are not safe. The Hindus, or rather the Brahmins, want to wipe out everybody. They demolished a big mosque, the Babri Masjid at Ayodhya, and look what they are doing in Kashmir. The plain fact is that if you're not a Hindu, you don't belong in India. It's becoming clearer and clearer. And they think they can challenge us as to whether Khalistan will protect minorities. This is a joke. We will worry about how to protect the minorities in Khalistan, but when is the rest of the world going to pay attention to what is happening to the minorities in India now? He had a point, but it didn't resolve the question. I told the now crowded roomful of Sikhs about a conversation I had had with Amarjit, walking outside of the Holocaust Museum. We had been commenting on the pins being handed out at the museum that said, "Never again." I said as we walked, that I hoped I would never be in a position to be writing a book about the Hindu resistance in Khalistan. Amarjit abruptly stopped. He looked at me very seriously as others bustled past us on the sidewalk, and said, "Cynthia, if it should ever come to that, I will be writing that book with you." He was quite silent as we crossed the street and got into a waiting cab. I had told a gathering of colleagues about this episode, and several of them had utterly discounted it as mere political rhetoric. When I retold it here, however, in a roomful of militants or militant sympathizers, I got a different reaction. He was serious, Harpal Singh said. Others nodded. Because his morality, his faith, wouldn't let him do otherwise. If we wouldn't stand up for the rights of a minority, what are we fighting for now? It would all be in vain. Someone else commented, "That's why being a Sikh is really an endless commitment." Right now the injustice is taking one form, but our struggle doesn't just end there. If there is another injustice, we will have to be ready to sacrifice then too. "Look," said a third. "Right now there are people with turbans who are killing Khalistanis, torturing people, dishonoring women. There are bad people who call themselves Sikhs in India, and there will be bad people who call themselves Sikhs in Khalistan too. It won't be some kind of heaven. But the real Sikhs, the real saint soldiers, will be there, and they will have to try to do what is right." This sounded reasonable to me. And I knew that Amarjit had been fully sincere in what he had said about writing a book about a Hindu resistance in Khalistan, should it ever come to that. Meanwhile, however, problematic moral decisions were being made every day by militants, for whom trying to do what is right might not be as clear-cut as the abstract defense of a hypothetical Hindu minority in Khalistan. Harpal's brother was sincerely trying to do the right thing in killing 2 Hindus, who spoke too loudly against Sikhs, or, more prominently, in killing a Congress minister. Harpal himself seemed less convinced that these things were right, more open to the moral ambiguities involved in guerrilla struggle. But then it's easier to consider ambiguity when you're an anthropologist or a literary man, rather than a commando with an AK-47. Picking up a weapon seems to resolve an awful lot of ambiguity for far too many people. That's its danger, and perhaps some of its allure also. After they were released, she said, "Don't worry, son. It's not happening only with me or with your sister. This is happening with all the mothers, all the sisters of Punjab. So just forget it." I'll tell you the most recent chapter in this story. Last year the Black Cats, or death squads of the police, started killing the families of the generals who were fighting for Khalistan. They tried to kill my father. They attacked him, they hit him with a car, and broke both his legs. He got gangrene poisoning through that, and died. Then the police took my mother and my sister into custody, and my sister was as yet unmarried. It's a very bad thing for unmarried girls in police stations. But you know what my mother said to me on the telephone about it? Who knows what they went through? But so bravely they went on anyway, they didn't even want sympathy from me. This is why we cannot lose. While we had been talking,